going to talk about today is, to some extent, an evolution of an industry. And when I say evolution of the industry, I'm really referring to the telecoms landscape and to some extent how that has forced for the likes of radio to exist. And here when I say experiencing, your experiencing itself, it really refers to the fact that everything around us is constantly changing. So there's nothing that's going to remain static for a long, long time. Whether it is services and products that we're offering, the products and services that many of you are offering in the industry, or what customer and consumer demands happen to be. Today I'm going to try and focus just a little bit on something I'm calling FTTI, Fiber to the ISP actually. And ISP meaning Internet Service Provider or General Service Provider for that matter. We know that ISPs themselves have evolved over the last many years, and some of them more so than others. In the early days, when some of them started offering, very, very basic services, this is what they really looked like. A lot of them looked like a bit of a bulletin board page that was converted into a web page, but it was very basic services. Very basic services just to service what they assumed customers to be demanding. And as more and more these ISPs started coming out and launching new services, they themselves started to experience and understand what customers actually wanted. So initially, offering a basic, dial-up connectivity to the internet, which is where many of the ISPs have started, onto more advanced stuff, which included where we are today, where there's a lot of solution offerings, and those solution offerings include a complete hosted cloud platform from Internet Solutions, which provides you with connectivity, the fiber service that goes along with that, the application environment. So a significant evolution from where they were 10, 15 years ago. Connectivity, of course, from the likes of telecom, which to a large extent has proliferated in the market. We would, of course, wanted to see more than less of that. Is that so? Wow. So I should stand away from that speaker. What about this one? That's okay. Great. So we're going to have to start again because this is a recorded session, so I don't know how to continue from here. Let's go back. No, I think I can make it. Right, so all the way through to MWeb Fiber, which today is hard for even MWeb to believe that they're offering a fiber to the business service. And many of these ISPs will continue to evolve. And Juanita spoke a little bit about fiber to the home earlier. And a few operators are considering announcing fiber to the home services. Now, some of these operators have already built out infrastructure. Many of them have invested the initial capital that allows them to build whatever capacity that they want to reach various customers, whether it's base stations that Vodacom has tried to light up as many of them as possible on fiber, through to office parks and business parks. Many of these service providers have continued to build and expand on their services portfolios. Now, why are they doing this? Of course, the first reason for that is demand. And demand is, of course, largely generated by what businesses and consumers use. And that demand, in this case, I'm just taking a very quick snapshot of business data in South Africa. So business data here refers to primarily things like the standard transfer of application data between one site and the other, video and video communications, web data, file sharing. So business data in South Africa is projected to reach the 85.5 petabyte level by 2016. So 2016 is 3 years from now, so it's not a long time away. So just a few months from now, this is the size of business data. Now, to give you some context of what is 85.5 petabytes, 1 petabyte is 20 million 4-drawer filing cabinets filled with text. I don't know what that is, but that sounds like a lot. But more relevant, 13.3 years of HD video. That's 1 petabyte. So 13.3 years, if you started watching all of the HD video content, it'll take you 13.3 years to reach 1 petabyte of data. To give you a better sense of that, 50 petabytes to get closer to 35 is the entire written works of mankind from the beginning of recorded history in every single language. So that is a lot of data that would give you 50 petabytes. So 85.5 is an unimaginable number, but that's just South Africa business data by 2016. And it's on a fantastic growth curve. And that's great for all of us here. So I have to speak about big data because petabyte is largely big data. Plus, I think it's a requirement for every presentation in 2013 to use the term big data. So big data, here it is an important consideration for ISPs. Why is it so important? Well, this significant volume of data has to be carried somehow and between different destinations. There's no use in this data just staying somewhere specific. It has to move. People have to access it. ISP networks are in a constant state of growth. We see this every day. We have a number of ISP customers that are growing at a phenomenal rate in terms of the amount of network that they're building to service demand. These ISPs, of course, are always playing catch up. You can never build enough to service the need. The other side is the finance people won't let you. But importantly, they're always having to catch up with demand that is being generated from their customer base. And of course, they have to invest in infrastructure that will allow them to grow their networks over time. So that's why they have to buy fiber infrastructure. They have to buy dark fiber, and they have to buy it from us because that's what we'd like for them to do. Many ISPs have started in an environment where they built all of these racks with dial-up modems and got people to connect straight to those modems, and they service the internet service like that. As time went on, they built their networks on leased lines from a fixed line operator in South Africa. And over time, those leased lines and the capacity that that leased line offered them, of course, tapered down significantly. And they were delivering services, to single customers larger than their entire network at times. And there was no way for them to deliver those networks without having to invest in infrastructure that they don't want to have to forklift anytime soon. So in order to do that, they need to ensure that the type of infrastructure they're building is going to last them at least 6 months, maybe 3 years if they're lucky. 5 years would be ideal. But the core infrastructure that they build and they build out has to service them for a number of years. As you know, the demand from the customer side is for a lower price. So they can't, at the same time, constantly remain in an investment cycle with prices coming down at such a rapid rate. Now, demand itself is fueled by, the killer app. And in this case, we're talking about the internet here. And this internet application, if you want to call it that, is really just an entry point into this web of what is known to be the internet. And this is merely just an interface to get into all of that content. But the trend over the last 3 years has also been one whereby you've seen a lot less people accessing the internet using any one of these browsers. They're accessing the internet via an application. And that application itself has become the replacement for the browser. So the true engine of the internet is now sitting in what is termed to be the websites of the internet, or in this case, I'm calling them the elements of the internet. So you have everything from your Yahoos and Googles and your social media, social networking sites. Don't know many of those, but they're all up there somewhere, as well as news sites. So people are consuming content in a very, very different way than they were a few years ago. The engine of the internet has become the actual website, the actual portal, the actual data storage environment. And getting that data back and forth to customers is really where the network comes in, and the intelligent network, importantly. I know some will argue our network at DFA that we built is not an intelligent network yet, because what we've done is we've created an enablement platform for ISPs, for service providers, for telecom operators. Now, this migration of data that we see. This migration is larger than any other migration we'd see, and I'm counting all of those migrations, including the one in the picture in the back. There is no amount of data migration, and I say migration, I don't mean like a project migration. I'm talking about data that moves back and forth between a data center and an individual user, between an enterprise office and a branch office. So that migration of data is moving at a pace that is very, very difficult to imagine. And we'll introduce another term. That last point at the bottom says, data owners do not spring clean and require constant access to some or all of their data at any time from anywhere. Now, when was the last time any of you spring cleaned your data? Nobody spring cleans their data. Data just accumulates. You don't say, okay, I think it's September, I'm going to start cleaning out all my hard drives now. No, because storage is just that cheap. You can just continue building your storage. Today, you can buy a hard drive for 5,000 Rand that can store the entire collection of digital music in the world. So every single digital piece of music stored in the world today, 28th of May, you can store it on one hard drive that will cost you 5,000 Rand. So that's a lot. That is the entire collection. You'll never be able to listen to all of it, but you can store it. So that growth of data and that volume of data is really been the key driver in any network around the world, in any ISP network, in any mobile network for that matter. This movement of large amounts of data from a data center to an enterprise office or in the data center to an end user is phenomenal. Here I'm just giving you a quick snapshot of what that amount of data really is. So that 2016 year that we see there on the right, this is basically saying that 1,160 exabytes. So an exabyte is the next level up from a petabyte, which is about 1.1 million petabytes will move between the user and the data center. Now we try to picture what is 1 petabyte or what is 50 petabytes. Now multiply that by a large factor to get to 1.1 million petabytes. Today's data networks that are in the ground today, today's networks that have been built will not be able to service the need of this 1.1 million petabytes in 2016. It just can't. The capacity is not there. But at the same time, we know that we went on a single piece of fiber, we were able to do 100 meg, and then we went to a gig, 100 gig, a terabit very, very soon. So that would allow for, as technology evolves, this data catch-up is moving at a much faster pace. So you need to move this amount of data across global networks at a significant pace in order to make it accessible at any point in time. Data center traffic, by the way, has dominated the internet since 2008. So in other words, what that means is there's more traffic that flows from or to data centers than any other type of traffic that is flowing across the internet. And that's been the case since 2008. It's going to continue for a number of years to follow. So service providers are forced to build network capacity within and to data centers across the world. So that forced part, some would argue, well, hold on, we're paying you for those networks. The business would argue, we're paying you for the infrastructure. We want it, so you must build it. The sad reality is that those margins will continue to shrink for any service provider. And until he's able to come up with innovative ways or make use of different or newer technologies to improve his efficiency of whatever capital is laid out, it's going to become a very, very tough business case to service the demand that's being put on any service provider out there today. So what does it all mean? Actually, you need to have a world-class service as a service provider. Whether it's an internet service provider or a mobile service provider, he needs to build world-class infrastructure. He needs to build infrastructure that will be, I hate using the term future-proof, but it will at least allow him to project the next 3 years of his growth and cater for it. So the next 3 years is 1.1 million petabytes around the world. That's a lot. How do you project that? How much of that is South Africa? How much of that is North America? How much of that is a specific service provider in South Africa? It's pretty tough to work out what those real numbers are except by looking at, what did you actually traverse in your network last year. Fiber solution offerings, have been built to service different market segments. We, as DFA, have built a number of different solution offerings that do well for base station providers, solutions that work well for a mobile operator, that allows him to deliver LTE from as many base stations as he can. I think we now have probably 3 base stations servicing LTE in the whole country, maybe more than 3, maybe 4, if you add all the networks up. The number is very small because it's tough to get coverage. But I saw other numbers in the press that show hundreds. But from what I could count, it's about 3 based on my own coverage experience. But it's getting there. It's getting there very fast. Other product segments include the likes of building and aggregation nodes for internet service providers to reach their customers faster, to reach their customers without spending large amounts of money in fiber backhaul that they may not necessarily have a requirement for in day one. So those are some of the innovative solutions that we've been trying to bring to market to help influence and help enable ISPs better, that allows them to deliver the end user services more efficiently. The product portfolio has and remains a true enabler of ISP offerings into the market, and this is the same for an ISP facing his business. This is the same for a submarine network operator facing service providers, and for service providers facing other service providers. This enablement of what you deliver, what you build, how you build it, and in how you enable people to reach, how you enable a service provider to reach an end customer, is really a critical factor in planning and building any ISP or any service provider network for that matter. That's it from me. We'll take questions now.